Welcome to week 7, Bible Studies for Life. Today we start a new section of the study that we've been in for this quarter, for the fall of 2023. We're looking at some apologetics type things like that, messages of things that Jesus says, confronting some apologetic questions. And so I think you're going to enjoy this. It's going to be challenging maybe in some aspects, but really good stuff that we're going to get to look at. So excited about that. Before we dive into John chapter 3, I want to invite you to subscribe. If you haven't already, hit the little subscribe button right down there. Appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up. Comment, share. You got questions, share this with other people. We appreciate it if you do that. And if you want to help support our teaching and our mission work, you can go right here to give.exposedtochrist.com. Appreciate those of you that have done that already. It really helps us out as we go along here. All right, let's look at John chapter 3 and then John 8. You may recognize this as being a conversation that Jesus has with Nicodemus. So this is kind of the end of it, right? We're at John 3:19, obviously after John 3:16. But it wouldn't hurt you to read that whole chapter of John just to kind of get a feel for what's going on in the conversation. Okay, so Jesus says this. This is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people loved darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. For everyone who does evil hates the light and avoids it, so that his deeds may not be exposed. But anyone who lives by the truth comes to the light, so that his works may be shown to be accomplished by God. Okay, Jesus is confronting Nicodemus. Nicodemus is struggling with the things that Jesus says because he kind of has his way of looking at the world and his way of understanding the Messiah and these things, and Jesus is speaking to him in a way that just baffles Nicodemus. I mean, you can think back to the beginning of chapter 3 when he says, "You must be born again," and Nicodemus is like, "What are you talking about? How can you go back into your mother's womb? That doesn't fit." So this is continuing on as Jesus is explaining to him kind of this understanding of truth, this understanding of the world that just Nicodemus just doesn't get, right? Okay. In the book, they talk some about the postmodernism and that look, and that is a worldview that really is overwhelming our society. It's been really very active for, 50 or 60 years in academia. Really go back farther than that. We can go back to the 50s and the 40s, 1950s and 40s, where that really begins to make its push in academia. In general, the idea of postmodernism is that there's not one overwhelming truth that anyone can rely on. There is no absolute truth, which is an interesting statement in and of itself, right? To say that there is no absolute truth is an absolute statement. So you in essence say, I can tell you one truth, there is no truth. Well, then you've claimed an absolute truth. So it contradicts itself by definition in a very real sense. But that is an idea that everybody can kind of make up their own idea of what is true. That's why we have this phrase that you hear a lot today. Well, you have your truth, I have my truth, that's her truth, that's his truth. No, there is truth. There's just truth that exists. And this truth that Jesus equates to light often. So he says, here's the judgment, right? The light has come. Now we know when he says that, he's talking about himself, right? The light has come into the world, but people love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil. We love darkness. We love to be hidden, quiet, where nobody can see. We know this is true, right? That we do our evil things in the dark. We do our evil things in secret where people can't see them. And we love that. We live in that darkness. But look, he says, everyone who does evil hates the light and they avoid it. And we know that's true, right? People that do evil don't want to do it during daylight. They do it in darkness. They do it away. They try to do it where nobody can see, which may be in broad daylight, but they don't want people to see. They hide their face so that people can't see them, as if you can't identify me, then you can't prove that I'm the one that did it, so then maybe I didn't actually do it, right? Because they don't want their deeds to be exposed. They don't want people to know. But anyone who lives by truth comes to the light. So you see here this equating of truth and light. So people that live by truth, there is truth, they live in the light, right? so that their works may be shown. They're not afraid to have what they have done made known. They're living in the light because they're living in truth. Well, this truth is so important. Jesus says in John 14, I am the truth, right? And look what he says here in chapter 8. He says, Then Jesus said to the Jews who had believed him, these are the Jews who believed him, okay? If you continue in my word, you really are my disciples. This is a proof, this is a show that you are his disciples. You continue. You can't just take a little bit and go, well, that's nice, but I'm not going to follow anymore. You continue in it, then you are his disciple. You are a follower of him, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, this is a statement that we know. Look, I went to the University of Texas. On the main building, it's engraved on top of the main building. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. But they think that's academically. That Jesus clearly here does not mean this academically. Clearly here he means he's talking about himself, and he's talking about spiritual truth, which he embodies. Spiritual truth, he embodies all truth. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. He says, so we'll get to this 33 here in a second. But this you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free is that this statement that you can live, we'll go back here, in the light, right? You live in the light. You know the truth. You live in the light. You live in broad daylight. You're not afraid of anything, and you are therefore free. You're free to live your life because you're living in truth. You're not having to hide anything. You're not having to go into the darkness. You're not having to move in dark spaces where people won't see what you're actually doing. You're living truth. You know truth. You live truth. You are free. This sets you free. People say things about you. It doesn't matter. I know what the truth is. So people call you names. I don't care. I know what the truth is. People oppose you. It's okay. I know what the truth is. And there is this idea for Christians that we don't have to be afraid of Christ in the public square, because Christ has always been in the public square and won. He does well. So the defense of Christ in the public square does well. Live freely. Let's have those conversations. We're more than willing to have those conversations because Christ will win in this public square. So here he says to the Jews who had believed him, right? But look, here are these people that are there also. They're in this conversation too. And they say, we are descendants of Abraham. They answered him, and we have never been enslaved to anyone. How can you say you will become free? We've never been enslaved to anyone? The descendants of Abraham, we know our Old Testament history, have never been enslaved to anyone? Well, we know, obviously, the main story of the story of Israel is being enslaved in Egypt. But then what happened after that? They were enslaved in Babylon. In fact, when Jesus speaks to them, they were in some very real sense enslaved in their own country, in Israel, because the Romans ruled. They were living at the graciousness of the Romans who allowed them to live and allowed them to have. They had to go and beg the Romans for things. They were in a sense enslaved to the Romans as it was, right? So when people are enslaved to the world, they often don't even realize it because this is the way life has always been. And so they don't even recognize it. And so they live in almost a false reality. And that's what's happening here. They're living in this false reality. And Jesus responds to them this way. Truly, I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave of sin. A slave does not remain in the household, but a son does remain forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will really be free. He's telling them, look, a slave of sin is held. They don't even know they're held. And they think they have a place, but they don't actually have a place. They think they belong, but they don't really belong. They really don't belong. He says, you don't really belong. But the Son does. The Son is there forever. And he says, if the Son sets you free, then you really are free. You are a child. Here's this introduction of this concept of being a part of the family of God, of being a child of God, of being set free to live in the household that God establishes, to be in His kingdom. And the Son sets you free, then you're free. You know, if you try to just think you're free, you just try to imagine that you're free, but you're still living in slavery. It says you're still held in this because you're deep in your sin and you don't even understand it. We'll go back here, you are in the darkness. You're living in the darkness, and the light has come, but you're in the darkness, and you'd rather stay in the darkness. He says, but if you will allow the Son to set you free, you really will be free. This truth that He is sets you free. And today, people want to deny truth and create their own truth, but the reality is they're living as a slave, and they don't even know it because they are denying what is truly the only way to be free. They're denying Christ. So they are slaves living in delusion, thinking that they have something that they do not have, trying to create something that they cannot create, and hoping for something that really never exists with them. This is who they are. This is how they're living. And they need the Son to set them free. What they need is to bow to the truth, to give in, to give up their will to the truth and accept Jesus as the truth so they can truly be set free. I hope that's helped. It's a great passage. I think you're going to like the next 6 weeks or so that we spend in this. Are really good. All right, thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe, like, comment, share with somebody else. Appreciate it if you do that. All right, see you next week.